Hi, Rob. Welcome to Grassroots Racer, where we explored the world of grassroots motorsport in Australia. In this episode, we are joined by Lee Nuttall, and he is a talented racer who competes in the Australian Pulsar Racing Association, known as APRA, which we will mention a lot in this video. So APRA is the Australian Pulsar Racing Association. He races in his trusty 1998 Nissan Pulsar. Lee is a true grassroots racer, driving it for his own team, All Stairs Racing, and honouring his skills through years of experience on track. He's a dedicated competitor, constantly pushing himself to improve and striving for success both on and off track. In this episode, we'll get to know Lee, learn more about his journey in motorsport, and explore the unique challenges, rewards of grassroots racing. So, sit back, rev your engines, and join us for an exciting ride with Lee. So, this is Grassroots Racer. And Lee, how are you tonight?
Yeah, good, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm great. And normally when I have guests on, my first question is, what inspired you to get involved in grassroots motorsport? And how did you get started?
What inspired me? I've always had an interest in cars. Back in the day, going to car meets, just hanging out with mates and all that sort of stuff. Started into sort of going to sprints, like Winton sprints and stuff. Just this 5-round sprint series. Did that for a few years and didn't get bored with it, but wanted a bigger challenge of just doing laps. Like you go to a sprint, you do a lap. That was good. I'll do a try for a bit of time. Wanted some more competitive racing, so the series I race in, APRA, Australian Pulsar Racing Series, started up. I already had a Pulsar. It's what I was doing sprints in, so we sort of converted that to a series spec car and sort of went racing.
Yeah, definitely. And the APRA is definitely a great category. We seen it. I think their first round was round 2 of the state series this year.
Yeah, yep. So
Yep.
round 1 this year, was at Winton, probably 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was racing there in my Formula V. Had no
Oh,
luck,
nice.
but yeah, is what it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Um, Could you maybe tell us a little bit about your racing background before joining APRA? Did you do anything
I
before racing a Pulsar?
didn't really have one. So I'm 39 now. I started racing when APRA started, which was 10 years ago. So I've been racing APRA since I was 30. Since that, before that, like I said, I did sprints, never did go-karting. Parents weren't into cars and all that sort of stuff. So it was sort of sprints and stuff when I was, mid-20s, and then it sort of evolved from there. Back in, 20 years ago, there's a lot less sort of sprint days and track
Yeah.
days, and it was a lot harder to go and drive a car on a track than it is now. So never really did anything when I was sort of your age.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually also doing the 5-round sprint series that Petters do now.
Oh
So
yeah, nice.
yeah, I've been doing that at Winton.
Yeah,
Think I did round 2 or 3. So
yeah,
it's actually a lot of fun, and I really
yeah. It
enjoy it.
is. It is. Like I say, that's where I got my start into driving cars on track. Not even race cars; they were just street cars.
What kind of preparation though goes into each race weekend, both for you and your team?
So preparation. So before we get into that, like APRA is a really good series. It's a one-make series, and the cars are relatively close to a road car. Obviously, safety gear, harnesses,
Yeah.
seats, roll cages, cutoffs, all that sort of stuff. We run race brakes, we run a control tyre, all that sort of stuff. But the mechanics of the car, the engine, the gearbox, all that sort of stuff is fairly standard. So it's pretty maintenance stuff. We do an oil change, we bleed the brakes, checking on pads. We make sure, spanner check, make sure the car, like all the suspension arms are tight, make sure all the shifter bolts are tight, all that sort of stuff. It's really basic maintenance for the cars. Once you get it to a decent level, it's not as if, I mean, you can, how much do you want to spend? Do you want to pull the
Mm.
engine out and do that? But as a grassroots category, that's not what it's designed for. So round
Yeah.
to round stuff is pretty minimal.
Yeah, so it's obviously seems like it's a very simple category. It's something that you've managed to get into a little bit later on. So it's your first sort of racing category that you've decided to do. And
Yep.
you've seen that you've got your little orange Pulsar there, and it's fit well into the
Yeah,
category.
that's it behind me. It's a, don't want to blow my own trumpet, but it's a pretty top spec car. It's the only car I've had. I've had it for 9 years, so there's been a bit of development into it. Excuse me, not as much. Like we can't do much, but suspension tweak here, and let's try this, and a new control part comes on. It's going to better exhaust, that sort of stuff. But as a wholeness, it's really made for budget racing. So you can't go and spend, well, you can, but you can't go and spend $50,000 on an engine to make it,
Yeah.
a horsepower machine, because you just can't do that much in the rules.
Yeah, we're very similar in Formula V. But for
Yeah.
those who don't know, could you walk us through a typical race weekend with APRA from practice to the final race of the weekend?
So it's probably very similar to what you do in Formula V. We Friday practice, just open practice at whatever track we're running at. So that was Winton 2 weeks ago. We're going to the Bend Motorsport Park in 2 weeks. So
Oh, yeah.
we just entered for Friday practice. And that's just, good chance to tweak the car. We're not going to go and make wholesale changes on the Friday, but, tyre pressures, a little bit of rear suspension here, front suspension there. And just, on a budget series, you don't go testing it. Well, you don't go testing at these tracks every second week. So, especially Adelaide, it's 8-hour drive from where I live. So Friday practice is pretty low key. Try a couple of things, and then it's just into quali on a Saturday morning, and then like most grassroots, we run a progressive grid. So race 1, where you finish, is race 2, where you finish, is race 3. It's pretty good.
Yeah, so obviously that's virtually the same as what we do.
Yeah.
And obviously you did say that the cars are very limited. How do you, balance the need for speed and competitiveness with the safety on track?
How do you mean safety on track?
Well, how do you guys race? Have you got rules where you're allowed to do a bit of rubbing, or do you?
We try to keep contact to a minimum, because 2 reasons. One, you just don't want dirty racing. We run under the CAMS rules, move once into a corner and all of that. But you've also got to look at, I'm self-funded to a certain extent. Like I have a sponsor that helps, but if I damage the car, the sponsor's not paying for that. So there's a bit of self-preservation in the way that most of us race in Victoria, in the Victorian APRA.
What is the most challenging aspect of racing in APRA, and how do you overcome it?
One of the most challenging aspects is, like most one-make series, all the cars are the same, so it's very hard to sort of make a gap, get a position, all that sort of stuff, because the bloke in front of you is effectively running the same stuff.
Yeah.
So you've got to find, little improvements in yourself, in your driving, all that sort of stuff. So, it's just good, close, tight racing.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of them things, because you're such a controlled category. It's hard for other guys to go and spend heaps of money and run up the front, which is the great thing about it. There's no budget, I guess, that could obviously it helps if you got money, but you can't just go out there and spend $1 million.
100%. It definitely helps if you've got money in car prep and presentation, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's not like, you can go and spend $25,000 on an engine and be Jamie Whincup in a Pulsar.
Yeah.
Because the rules just state that you can't do it.
And obviously, because there's limits to your performance and stuff, you've got to be able to race well mentally. So how do you approach each race in your mental state, and what techniques do you use to stay focused?
That's a good question. It's sort of, I don't think about it too much. Sort of once the helmet goes on and you sort of, visor goes down and engine starts, it's just sort of everything else disappears. Like had a few things going on before round 1 that I don't want to go into too much, but
that's fair.
It was actually good to go racing. Just put the helmet on, concentrate on brake marker here, gear shift there, turn here, turn there. It actually worked really well.
And
So
it is definitely a great escape if you're not feeling well. The second you put the helmet on, put the visor down, it's just you switch on. You're focused
yeah,
on
yep,
every gear change, every braking marker, watching for stuff on the track like the breeze and whatnot.
yep, exactly, 100%. Like, you just hone in on that back of the car in front of you, and am I getting closer? Is he getting further away? That sort of, you
Mm.
just, yeah, just on it. You get to the end of a weekend and you're pretty spent, sort of mentally and physically,
Yeah.
because a lot of concentration, and that's a lot of what a lot of people don't understand is the amount of concentration to drive a race car.
Mm. Yeah. I'll be the first to admit it. I am not very focused outside of the car, but for some reason, whenever I got a helmet on, I'm a very focused person and I don't get
Yep,
distracted very easily.
yeah, it's the way it's got to be, especially when we're not going super fast, and you'd be the same in your Formula V, but
Mm.
a bad accident can happen at any speed, so
Yeah.
you've just got to concentrate.
Even in go-karting, like we used to have stacks happen all the time. So we're only going 80k an hour, but you got to be able to
Yep.
dodge it or you got to be able to move here. And it's still very technical and tricky.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
But can
and,
you,
and knowing where all the other cars and all that sort of are,
mm,
where they are around you, and visibility out of the car's not the best. So just a concentration for all of that.
yeah, I know in the Formula V, we sort of got vision from our side frontwards, but you've got
Yep.
your A pillars to worry about. You got everything in the way. So
Yeah.
it's a bit
And the
hard.
mirror, you can't see much out of the mirror on this side because there's a window net in the way.
Mm,
It's a roll cage out the back, so you're not seeing much out of there. So
yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, you'll know if someone's there though.
yeah, you feel a tap now and then, and you're always like, oh Jesus, how big was that? Or you expecting to come back to the pits and the rear bumper be hanging off and the panel caved in, and you're like, oh, it's all right. So
Definitely. And do you remember or could you describe any particular memorable races that or moments that you've had in your racing career so far?
I've had a lot of good battles, as you can understand, being sort of really close. A lot of them I take sort of personal milestones for. Like
Hmm.
I held the lap record at Winton
Yeah.
for a couple of years. Then I got lowered, and I made improvements within myself and within the car. And I didn't beat the lap record, but I went under my lap record. So a lot of personal goals of just, at the end of the day, I don't care if I win or where I come, as long as the racing's good. But yeah, it's just personal stuff of I reckon I can go faster here. I can do this better.
Yeah. I'm one for winning. But if I have a good battle with someone, even if I'm the loser of it, I'll go and shake their hand and say good race
100%.
because even though I'm out there and I'm a kid and I want to win, it's still good if you can have a good, respectful, clean battle with someone and both cars come home in one piece.
That's it. That's what it's all about. I always say to people, like, oh, you drive race cars. I'm like, yeah, but people play footy, they play cricket. This is what we do.
Hmm.
It's just a little bit more expensive and can be a little bit more dangerous, but you've still got to be respectful out there. And
Hmm.
you don't want to go driving into people and have panels hanging off. And that's not what we're about. You're out there
Yeah.
to drive a race car, not to drive into people.
Yeah, we're not in Excels.
You said it, not me.
No, I'm just kidding around. But it is
Yeah.
yeah, it's a bit of a category where they like to dint panels.
Yes.
So yeah, I
Yeah,
reckon
I've heard that.
every
I know a couple of people that drive XLs.
yeah,
I've heard
same.
that.
Yeah, every second car sponsored by a panel smasher.
Yeah, and a wreckers.
Yeah. But how do you stay up to date with changes and developments in the motorsport industry? Because every day there's something new happening in motorsport. So do new rules come in often because the series has only been around for 10 years?
Our rules sort of get looked at every 12 months, start of every season, and they're not, our rule changes aren't wholesale changes. I mean, some are. We went from an open diff, which the cars come with standard from the factory, to a welded diff, and then an LSD, a controlled LSD became available. So that'd be the biggest sort of change in the last couple of years. Like most things, a tyre contract will come up, so we change a tyre supplier periodically because
Yeah.
new sponsor will come along and be like, so we're sponsored by MRF tires at the moment. Before that, we had Toyos. Before that, we had Hancocks. So fundamental changes in the series are very small. We're changing rear sway bar mounts this year, which you've got to move away from this back to a more factory sort of stuff. We've changed header suppliers, so you can still run the old one, but if you want, you can run the new headers. That's with small increments because the cars, like I say, the rules state we can't do a lot, so it's not massive developments and massive changes in rules for us.
Yeah, we're the same. If we're changing anything, it's most likely safety. It's not always improve your engine this way or
Yeah.
Obviously I've only run on the Dunlop branded tire, but only 2020 we were running Yokohamas and they were a harder compounded tire. So things change all the time in motorsport.
That's it. And we've had tire suppliers before where we haven't changed tire supplier, but the actual compound of the tire has changed year on year. So, you've got to make changes for that. Like, it's the same tire, but now it doesn't last as long because the manufacturers have made it softer.
Definitely.
Change a few setup tweaks and that sort of stuff, but driving style, but yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird one when something happens where you got to change your car because of the rules and you get back in, well, it's a bit different and you got to adjust it.
Yeah. The big one, like I say, is because we changed diffs recently, going from a weld diff to an LSD, it's just slightly different driving style. So the car hasn't changed, but, to drive it a little different. And the challenge of that's pretty good. So, but I think they have made the cars better. So,
where do you think they best race?
How do you mean, like best circuit that sort of suits them?
Yeah.
Winton's really good. So I've driven at Winton, Phillip Island, Wakefield, Tailem Bend. But yeah, Winton's really good for them. Good, you've driven at Winton. Yeah. Good, technical circuit. Doesn't matter too much about the horsepower. And you are going to get discrepancies with the car. So like I said, we're going to the Bend in 2 weeks, which is more of a horsepower-based circuit. So if you've got a built motor, and when I say built motor, freshened up rings, bearings, all that sort of stuff, opposed to a Rekka motor that's got 300,000 Ks on it, you're not going to get found out too much at Winton because it's a handling circuit. Whereas when we go to the Bend, you're going to get found out a little bit more because the straights are a little longer and, it's a higher speed. Same as sort of Phillip Island, you'll get found out if you're down on power a little bit. So Winton's a really good place. And Wakefield was the same when we could get there. Really good handling circuit and the cars are fairly even. So it comes a lot to driver ability.
How'd you like Wakefield before it was closed?
Wakefield was good. I hadn't driven there in quite a few years, but it was a good little layout, good challenging, like up the hill and down the hill through the fishhook and all that sort of stuff. It was good. Like I say, I live in Melbourne, so getting to the interstate events when it's not part of my calendar becomes a little challenging. So, we're going to the Bend in 2 weeks. That's part of our Victorian calendar, so that's why we're making the trip over. We're doing the full season. Whereas Wakefield wasn't. And it was also harder because APRA runs a New South Wales series as well. But the New South Wales series seems to run single-day events, and that works for them. But for an interstate trip, it makes it hard to sort of seem viable of going up on a Saturday to race on a Sunday, and there's only, an hour between races. If you have a problem, you can't fix the car, and it's a long way to go for a commitment to potentially not much track time. That's just how I feel about it. Whereas where we race in Victoria, you've got time if you have a drama. We're a 2-day race weekend. You've got drama. If you've got a drama, you've got a couple of hours to fix it. Yeah.
Sometimes that hour when nothing's going wrong, the couple of hours when nothing's going wrong, takes forever.
Makes it day drag, doesn't it?
Yeah, but when you have something going on, trust me, it goes by pretty quick.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, we had to change a gearbox. I blew a gearbox at Tailem Bend between sessions. And that was a rush, changing the gearbox in, an hour and a half. And we ended up rebuilding. We took the diff out of the broken gearbox because it's front wheel drive, so the diff's in it. Took the diff out of the broken gearbox, put it in the spare gearbox. So we had to rebuild a gearbox and install it in the car in an hour and a half. So that was tight. Whereas, like I say, if in Sydney or New South Wales, we wouldn't have had that opportunity. It would have been weekend over.
Yeah, I remember at Winton last weekend, the weekend before, I come into pits after quali, I think it was. I got towed back to pit lane because I had a clutch drama. Yep, we put about 20 minutes into that time check. Oh yeah, we still got 3 hours. Oh, let's quickly pull this front end apart and see if we can get it working right. Because it was really soft and it kept touching the ground at the front.
Yep.
So come in the pit lane, pull the whole front apart. Time check, 20 minutes, slap it back together.
Right back together, yeah. Send it.
Got it working.
Nothing worse than doing that sometimes because you're like, oh, did we get to put it back together right? You know, is everything tight? Like, oh, what's that noise? Did it feel like this before?
Yeah, you know, even if nothing's wrong, something doesn't feel right.
Yeah, no, I've had that before.
Yeah, it's can be very scary.
Yeah, that's one of the worst things. I hate being rushed to get in the car. Like to be ready, helmet on, in the car. All right, let's go to dummy grid. Like, yeah. So pulling a car apart with not much time isn't fun.
Yeah, and I'm normally the mechanic of my own car, so I've always got a friend or someone we're paying to help. So it's me and one other person, sometimes my brother. So 3 of us, it can be a bit tricky. And I hate when I'm standing there putting on my helmet and they're still working on it.
I've had the same. It's like, all right, we're going to finish putting this back together. Go and put your gear on. And you're like, oh, yeah, but I trust you guys, but I still feel weird. Like, you know, because we're not big budget. There's a mechanic and I'll just get out of the car and walk away. It's weird to do that sometimes. I prefer not to do it, but, you know, you do what you got to do to get back on track.
Oh, trust me, I would love someone else to look after it, but sometimes you also at the same time like, I want to be there, want to have a go.
100%.
It's something that I'm really thankful for that my dad made sure, even from go-karting, that I was working on my own kart. Because today, it's become really useful that I'm able to get on the tools, work on my car, put it back on track if I got to.
Yeah, and for someone like yourself, who's obviously a lot younger than me, that's a skill to have going forwards. If you're looking at progressing your racing career, it's, hey, I'm not just a driver. I have the mechanical sympathy because I know how it works. I know how to, if it breaks, I can get in there and help it. You know, it's a good skill to have.
Yeah, and it's one thing that a lot of people have told me is going to be useful for the future. So I really do hope that I can use my mechanical knowledge. But then again, my dad was a mechanic and it seems like a pretty bad job being every day.
Yeah, depends on what sort of mechanic. Whether you're a mechanic down at the local shop doing services or you're a race mechanic. So
race cars people get the impression they're a lot cleaner, but I think I'd sometimes disagree.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
But community is a huge part of motorsport. So how is the community within the APRA and how has it impacted your experience as a racer?
Really good bunch of blokes. Like, really good bunch of blokes. So we have a group chat on the Facebook, you know, lots of banter going on before the race weekend of, you know, and, you know, we're going to have a good race. We're going to hope you get to the track. And it's also good, like, at the track, oh, hey, man, my alternator shit itself. Have you got one? Yeah, I've got one. You do what you can to help competitors get back on circuit. Because at the end of the day, we want cars on circuit. We want to grow the series and that. So all the guys are sort of really friendly, good to get along with. You put that aside when you go racing. You're like, you know, I'm going to pass him. But once you get you out of the car, take the helmet off, like you said before, you go and shake the hand. That was good racing. We'll all go out for dinner as a category on a Saturday night. Good bunch of dudes. Like, really good bunch of dudes.
Yeah, I've been invited to that stuff before, but I'm like, seriously, I'm always at the track working on my car, and you aren't aware because you probably haven't followed me much, which is fair enough. I don't mind, but I've not finished inside the top 20 since midway early last year.
Oh,
because
you'll get there.
I've had troubles flat out. Like my car's always had something going on, so I'm always
Yeah,
staying after dark trying to figure it out.
trying to get it, trying to make it better.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Although I reckon Phillip Island next round, we're looking good. So hopefully,
Yep. Oh, you're going to that Phillip Island round. Yeah, you're at
hmm,
Phillip Island when we're at Taylor Bend. Yep.
yeah.
I got a couple of people going to that.
So are they racing the Victorian one and the other one at the same time?
So Taylor Bend is what we call a national round.
Oh,
So
so you're
it's
doing
part of
nationals.
the Victorian series, but you can get points to a national championship. So APRA effectively has 3 championships. They'll do a Victorian one, a New South Wales one, and a national one. The national one is, I don't know off the top of my head, it's like 2 or 3 rounds from Victoria, 2 or 3 rounds from New South Wales to become a national champion. Um, Trying to encourage people from New South Wales to come to Victoria and vice versa, Victoria to go to New South Wales. But yeah, it's part of the Victorian series, so that's why I'm going.
And what changes or improvements would you like to see in the Australian motorsport industry, particularly at a grassroots level?
I'd like to see more support for grassroots level from sort of outside the sport and from the top end of sport. Like you look at, supercars,
Hmm.
and they're always going to these street circuits and all that sort of stuff where it's really good for TV, but nothing boils down to us. You know, you drive around Sandown, for example, that's in major need of a resurface.
Hmm.
Yes, it's privately owned, but the amount of use it gets used, you know, whereas you look at Phillip Island, that's privately owned, that's, an immaculate facility. But I'd just like to see some more support for grassroots motorsport. You always hear about, this Pakenham track's going to get built. Oh, we're going to build a track at Ballarat, or the new
Hmm.
one's going to be at Avalon. Well, not just motorsport that I do. You look at drag racing. Heathcote's just opened up for the drag races again. They've got somewhere to go again.
Yeah.
It's good to have somewhere to go that doesn't cost the world and is
Yeah.
easily accessible. And like I said before, when I was your age, track days were near impossible to find and hard to get to and very expensive. It's a
Yeah.
lot easier now, and that's good. But I'd like to see more. Better facilities. Another track here or there. Like,
Yeah.
wouldn't hurt.
And it's good. And I also know what you mean in a way. Instead of maybe saying new track here, new track there, maybe improve some of the old ones. That's why it's good
Yeah.
that Calder Park's coming back, for an example.
Yep.
They're
We're running
doing,
there in August.
yeah,
That's going to be awesome.
we're running there in late October, I think. And I think
Yep.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think they're opening the track for testing in
Yes, I've
August.
seen that. They're going to do like track days there, which will
Yeah.
be really good. I want to get there and test. So,
Mm.
I know where it goes. As
Yeah.
silly as that sounds.
Oh,
It's been shut for so
that's
long.
true.
I know you drive down the straight and turn right,
Mm.
but after that, I don't know. I've never
I'm
driven there.
lucky. I'm lucky to have driven on it on a simulator. Oh, my simulator at home.
Yeah,
So,
nice.
yeah. But
Yeah.
can you talk about the role that sponsorship and funding play in grassroots motorsport, and how have you navigated those challenges?
So I'm lucky enough to be sponsored by my work, All Stairs. We make timber staircases for residential and commercial builds. So I have a really good relationship with my boss. He's happy to sponsor the car. He knows it's just a hobby; it's never going to go anywhere. He doesn't want to, sponsor a supercar team or anything. But um,
He's
yeah,
just
I'm
said it's
lucky in that.
he's just said it's support a local driver.
Yeah, yeah, but it is hard at grassroots to get sponsorship because the biggest question you ask is not what your sponsor can do for you. That's easy money, whether you spend it on entries or tires or whatever. What can you do for your sponsor? Like,
Mm.
your sponsor's giving you X amount of dollars. What are they getting out of it other than their
Yeah,
name on the side of the car? Like, going to get a Facebook post every now and then. But yeah, so
definitely. It's a tricky thing, and it's something that we still try to master. You can see we've got heaps of sponsors, but it's
yeah,
still very tricky to keep the partnership going and keeping them
yeah.
happy.
yeah, and just staying in contact, especially in grassroots. We're
Mm,
driving at Tail and Bend in 2 weeks, and then we're not driving again till August, so we've got nearly 3 months off. How
really?
do you keep people? Yeah, it's just the way the calendar falls. But how do you keep people interested while you're not doing anything? You're like, oh, it's just disappeared because you know when we're not in that 3 months, I'm just going to work. Like, what am I going to post? Yeah,
Yeah.
car's still in the garage.
This is what
So
this is.
yeah,
Um, but what are your plans and goals for the future of your racing career? Because you said it's just a hobby, but what are your goals for the future and with yourself and APRA?
personally, my goals, I'm just happy racing. Like I said, I turned 40 this year, so you know, Roland and Ryan Walkinshaw and all that aren't watching me race. Like,
Yeah.
no one gives a shit what I'm doing. I'm just in it because I have fun. I have a good bunch of blokes that I do it with. That's all it is for me. That's all it's going to be. I know my car really well because I've had it for 10 years, so I have no goal to step into another category. Yeah, would
Yeah.
it be cool to drive a TCR car? Yes. Am I going to go and find a budget to do it? No, because it's expensive. Um, Goals for APRA, I'd like to see the category grow. I'd like to see more cars on circuit. We currently race with the 2 litre sports sedans here in Victoria, sort of a mutually beneficial partnership so that we
Yep.
get a lot more cars on the grid. We had 22 cars, 24 cars at round one. I think it was 12 sports sedans and 11 Pulsars, so it worked really well. But I'd like to see 20 Pulsars on the grid in Victoria, and I was having our own
Yeah.
race.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I want to thank you so much for joining me tonight, Lee, because it's been great to be able to talk to someone who does something a little bit different. Because I normally talk to people who don't race in a small category in state series. Normally they race in
Yep,
the more well-knowns like
yep,
Porsche 944s or, you know, the
yep.
saloon cars, whatever. So it's been great.
86s sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's been great to
Yep,
talk to you, because it is Grassroots Racer. So we do like to try
yep.
and talk to people who are really involved at a grassroots level.
No, it's been a good chat.
Yep.
Thanks
Thank you
for
so
thanks
much
for
for your
reaching
time.
out, mate.
That's all
Thanks,
right.
mate. Thanks for reaching out. Cheers.